Hello and welcome to another episode of Triple Tap. I can see lots of people joining us this evening, so I hope you guys are in for a treat tonight. We have a very special guest for you. I'd like to welcome Kent to the call, and of course we have Cole, the sociologist, back joining us this week because Lance and Kim are at a very special meeting up there, I believe, on towards the Gold, up in the Gold Coast somewhere, I think.
Caloundra.
Thanks, Kent. Yeah. So we have Cole stepping in. This is Cole's second Triple Tap call. So we'll make you an old pro at the Triple Tap soon enough, Cole. But you do look a bit like a ghost there, I must say. We'll have to get you having a good video.
Oh, this is what's left. This is what's left of me.
The ghost
Thank you.
of... So, guys, as I usually ask you, we usually ask you what kind of your week you have. But if you're anything like mine, I've had a very, very challenging week. So, guys, give us in brief just one really good thing that's happened to you guys this week. One really good, positive something that you've been working on this week that you've had a win at or whatever. So maybe
just one.
Oh, okay.
Just
maybe
one.
We can squeeze in two, but be quick because, of course, it's
Cole. You go first.
All right. Well, we survived the goat apocalypse, so the attack on the new school greenhouse. A few cucumbers survived, and on top of that, the kids have been. We've been testing. We've been doing bizarre experiments on the children at the new school, folks, and testing the interdisciplinarity out. So this is things like crossing various spheres of education, English and music and maths all at once. It's very interesting. So that.
Excellent. And you guys had a win, I hear, there was a case in New South Wales or something that you also had a win.
Talk about this.
That.
Hi. Yeah. Hey, I should have gone there. Yes. The workers' comp. Look, as anyone may know, about 14 months ago, we started the teacher group, and as one of our survival mechanisms, we threw people into the workers' comp survival kit. Because there were dozens and dozens, over 100 cases at the time, the IRO and the Injury Commission and commissioners said that they would see 3 test cases. It would be typical of every scenario you would see amongst the others. One of these is finally, the others are being reserved for judgment at the moment. One of them has now got across the line. That was a temp employee, the Dorking case. And that means that the floodgates will now open. This can create little bits of hard law that can inform other cases, and fireys, nurses, ambos, have at them. That's interstate territory. Go find a workers' comp lawyer and get across the line and enjoy your life.
Excellent. Good work. And Kent, what about you? What's one or two good things maybe that you've got through this week before we introduce our guest for this evening?
One or two. Tap's got thousands of things it's been
I know,
but look, I've got to give everyone a rundown. Lance and Kim are doing presentations this whole week. They're meeting with a few TAP groups and with a few other groups and introducing the councils, the people's councils that can be run with full authority from the Australian Constitution. They're doing this on the back of advice, legal advice, obviously from Spiros, which has proven to be correct. We've got mayors calling the mayors of the People's Council Mr. Mayor. And they are bringing their councils absolutely to the negotiating table, and they're bringing them to account for the misuse of the funds and the stupid things they're all voting on and choosing to do. It just goes to show freedom's not free, but if we stand up as a people, we can grab these mongrels and we can make them do what common sense suggests that they do. And let me say that with a smile. We can make them do it. Okay, sorry, that looked like a leer, but anyway. Okay, so that's going on. I want to just put both hands in the air and cheer. A week ago on the Tuesday, the Githibal Ngarakbal Yukum Yukum, or I say the GNYY Nation, was actually created. We've had 2 government meetings with that so far, and that is proceeding very well. The Minister of Finance's plan is proceeding well. So that's a little bit of an update there. We've been reaching out to quite a few other freedom groups. And some of them are like, we have to ask some questions of the leaders of some other freedom groups. We're definitely doing that. We are definitely asking them questions that highlight what their performance is. So 1, what their performance is. 2, what their strategy, what they hope to achieve by their strategy. And we're seeing a lot of the strategies that there is no strategy. right? But also some of the strategies we're seeing are just leading the Australian freedom fighters or freedom movements momentum straight into a dead end, right back into the government that has caused this oppression in the first place. We see that as a dead end. Yep. So, but we are identifying those who are so keen to create brand new systems that will free our people directly out from under the boot of our filthy government, who are just bribed. Yeah. No integrity whatsoever. So look, huge week. The man we're going to talk to tonight is helping us in that fight. He's an absolute freaking champion. And I can tell that you want me to shut up now, so I will.
You're absolutely right, Ken. I do. But you know what? I sometimes never get to share the good stuff that's happening. And finally, after how many weeks I've been saying that Western Australia is very, very sleepy, I've had a good week myself because I've had people reaching out, wanting to find out about the councils, wanting to find out about the People's Trust. I had a lovely chat to a couple of Aboriginal ladies over here. We call them that over here because it's very funny. We got some really good insight into what they like to be called and not called. And it's very different from the East and the West as well. So that was really interesting. And hopefully it's opened the door to have those discussions over here and find those tribal elders that we can do exactly over here what the Githawal and Narakabul have done. So we are making headways finally. And I'm really excited because I'll be speaking right after this Zoom. I'll be on another Zoom speaking to a group and setting up hopefully our first council here in Western Australia. So super excited about that. But
good job.
Yeah, very excited. So let's get on, and I'd like to introduce our guest for this evening, who is in the area of the common law, a place that I also started once. And Glen Dreier is married to Liz, and he has 3 children and 5 grandchildren. And they live near Mackay in North Queensland. And I know the Queensland guys up there in Mackay are doing some amazing stuff up there. And I know they're about to get a council up there very, very soon as well. So very exciting. His working career has been in the electrical industry, involved in mining and industry throughout Northern Australia. He's been a state fisheries and shipping inspector, responsible for the patrolling, education and prosecutions involved in these resources. He's also a retired commissioned Army officer of the Transport Corps. Glen is also currently the common law sheriff. So behave yourself, people. He's the common law sheriff for the Sovereign People's Assembly of Mackay. And after helping to establish the Common Law Assembly in Mackay, a need to establish community common law assemblies became apparent. He was approached to help start a National Common Law Assembly executive to help train and give guidance to common law assemblies. Many assemblies were unsettled, with some imploding due to poor direction and infighting. And that's something definitely that I saw happen in some of the common law groups that I was initially when I first got in and learning about all this stuff. So let's hear more. So ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Glen Dreier to the call, and let's find out more about the common law. So Glen, if you're there, love, just turn your video on and let's get chatting. There he is. Hello, Glen. Welcome to the call, my man.
Hi, everyone. Great to be here. Really nice.
Excellent. Glen, let's kick it off and just find out, like, what got you into common law? How did you get started, and what are some of the major inroads that you're having in the common law movement?
I've been heavily involved in law in the fisheries sense, and also as a commissioned officer with military law. And it's always been a pet favourite of mine. I've always felt there was something wrong with it, and lo and behold, when things really started to kick off, there was a group established in Mackay, and I was approached about common law, and from there it went on. I've become the sheriff, and from there, as you mentioned in the bio, I was asked to come onto a national executive to give direction.
What do you have to
Glen,
do?
Sorry, Ainsley.
Sorry, Ken. I'm curious. What do you have to do as a sheriff? What's your roles and responsibilities there? Have you had to implement any of it yet?
Not well. My first actual role was probably way back in February or the late part of January, when we're involved in the Velvet Revolution and the distribution of the papers, the copies of the summonses to all the police stations. So it was building rapport with the police and is reaching out and establishing it. Our role as a common.
Sorry, I'd like to chip in and say, you guys doing that because the common law, our common law communities across the country helped with that. And I want you to know, I have been contacted by several of my friends who are still serving police officers, and they were really very, very grateful for all of those letters, because those letters showed to the commissioned officers that the general public knew that the laws that were being enforced on them as police officers were unlawful. It showed that the public knew that. It showed that when they had complained to their commissioned officers that these laws were unlawful and that they were simply propping up stupid politicians who had no idea what they were doing. I mean, Dan Andrews gets around in a tracksuit most of the time. How can you have respect for that man? But anyway, that's just from his fashion choices, let alone his law. Okay, but the coppers were very glad that the common law people, the common law groups had been supporting them in that way. And I think we need a great deal more of it. But anyway.
Do you think the current police actually want to see more common law people and common law sheriffs standing up?
Oh, look, the current coppers are sick to death. They've had it up to here with their commissioned officers, their unlawful behaviour, their belligerent behaviour. They are sick to death of being bullied. The lower ranking police can see the corruption.
Oops, we've just had Kent frozen there.
Go on. That's what you get for calling them corrupt, mate.
we may lose it. We may lose
What have you seen, Glenn, in response from coppers?
Yeah, as I say, we actually went to the police station. It was a very touchy situation at the time because we weren't the most popular people. We'd had several people in the freedom movement arrested in marches. But we approached it correctly, I believe. And we got a fantastic reception. We spoke to the officer in charge of the police station. He gave us about 25 minutes, but he allowed me to present all the paperwork. He said to me, look, can I take this? I said, by all means, it's yours. He said, I'd really like to have a really good read of it and call you back sometime tomorrow. And I said, by all means. And sure enough, he called back the next day and he was very appreciative. And I think that helped to settle the dust and make them realise that we weren't just a bunch of yobbos. We did do it professionally. We had the paperwork presented professionally, and that is the key to it. And some of them didn't go so well, but certainly up here we had a great reception, more than fair.
What was within how did you interact with sort of existing legislation or statute law, and how much of it was sort of the common law rights, and what did you articulate in these statements and et cetera that you handed over to the police?
That was the statements were actually prepared through Velvet Revolution. Len Bennett's did a lot of work there, and it was based from international law. Okay, international common law. It did not deal with admiralty law or statute law. And a lot of people have said, oh, it was a waste of time. But there was a very, very interesting point recently come out of it. If you'd like to use the term, King Charles has been served with a notice to appear before the International Common Law Court, and I believe it's on the 11th of November. And he is facing charges of murder, child trafficking, plus numerous other. And that is a direct result of those summonses, the copies of which we shared with the police way back in January. So it wasn't a waste of time.
Through what forum is that to be heard? Where would he, if he turns up, from where would one see that?
I believe at this stage it'll be Brussels. It'll be international law. The same court that actually summoned Pope Benedict, who did not turn up. But when you do not turn up for a common law court, it does not stop it. It goes ahead. He was found guilty. This is the reason why he suddenly retired and has become a recluse in the Vatican. So it's very serious stuff.
And if he steps outside the Vatican, hey Glenn, they'll nab him, right?
The arrest warrant is still issued, ready to go, and there's even a reward out there.
Beauty.
So, yep.
Excellent.
I'm looking for a working holiday. Where does one see this international common law derived? We're talking Magna Carta here. We hear these names thrown around. Forgive me for not knowing. From where are we going to see these texts of law that are sourcing this authority?
I don't quite follow what you're asking.
The international law, where do we see it written? From what source?
We base ours on the International Common Law Court, and there is an International Common Law Manual,
right,
which I can provide you copies of. That's what we base everything with. There's these international courts set up all around the world, England, Canada, Europe, they're all over. So that's what we based it on.
Glenn, would I be right in, sorry, Colin,
right.
would I be right in saying that is the commonlawcourt.com?
The English one is commonlaw.com, but I don't know. I don't think that one will. That's the English one. International, I'd have to provide that for you.
Okay.
The International Common Law Court.
When we go to the common law courts, we've got Great Britain and international as their subheading. So maybe they cover off on both. I might just put that in there for people who wish to go and have that in the chat.
Yep. And as I say, I can certainly add anything you wish at a later date.
Yeah, cool. And then we might be able to put that in the when we do the replay. So when people are watching this afterwards, they can go and check out any of those links. So that would be most helpful.
Yep, for sure.
Can I just ask you one question before? I know Kent's probably got lots of questions sitting there to ask you. As the sheriff, one of the things that will happen when we get all these people's councils up and running, obviously we need, first thing we need is a mayor, then we need a treasurer, and then all the people come on board. And obviously when we get to at least roughly 100 people or so, we're going to want to appoint our own sheriffs in each of the areas that these people's councils set up. Is this where the common law sheriffs can step in and be our sheriffs for those areas if you have enough sheriffs stepping up?
Yes, that is normally where the sheriffs come from.
Excellent.
The sheriff is elected by the common law court or the common law assembly, sorry. That is where they come from, the community.
And if
they're
somebody
not appointed by the council.
No, no, okay. So if the council said we need a sheriff, they would come to you guys to say, hey, we need a sheriff, blah, blah, blah. So if somebody wanted to become a sheriff for the common law assemblies, where would one go to do that? And, is there training provided for them?
Yes, as it turns out, you happen to be talking to the National Sheriff Trainer. Another hat I wear.
Talking to the right man then.
Yeah, the whole idea is the first thing you do is you join a common law assembly. It is up to that assembly to vote you into their assembly as the sheriff. You are not a sheriff of the council. You are a sheriff, common law sheriff of the common law assembly for that community.
Mhm.
That's particularly important. There's been a lot of confusion over that over the last 12 months. Because some people, as you just said, said, oh, I want to be a sheriff, and suddenly they're appointed. That's not the correct way that a sheriff is normally appointed. They are voted on or voted into a position by the community in a common law assembly.
Do they also take an oath like the current police?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, they do take an oath, and they take the oath of the 1900 Australian Commonwealth Constitution, Commonwealth of Australia Constitution.
Excellent.
So they take the proper oath or affirmation, depending on your choice.
Glen, you
Well,
often
it's
hear
good to
about.
see.
Oh, sorry, Ken.
Go
you
ahead. Go ahead. No, go ahead, mate.
Definitely
No,
your turn,
Yeah.
mate.
I was just going to say. The standards. There are standards for common law. Those standards are held internationally. Britain, Australia, Western civilization that deals with common law works out of that under those guidelines and under those regulations from the international regulations, the International Common Law Court. And common law, look, I've always held that training in the law is essential for every person in your life. When you know the law and you understand how it applies in your life, it stops you from being bullied in so many situations. And that's what a lot of our politicians rely on, and other people in life who want to be bullies. They'll try to bluff you, but when you know the truth of that law and you've had quality training, it becomes a situation where you can not only defend yourself, you can bring about situations where you don't have to defend yourself because the person will back down. Glen, have you had a circumstance or an event in your life where you've utilised the common law to defend yourself? I'm not saying you're a larrikin or anything like that. I know that you're an extremely law-abiding citizen, and so you probably don't come on the radar very often. But have you been able to use common law to defend yourself?
Look, I think not necessarily directly to defend myself, but we all use it all the time. Common law, this is what people have, it's been hidden from us. Common law is natural law. It is based on natural law, it is common law. It does not comprise of judges, it does not comprise of solicitors, barristers. It comprises of a community. And that community forms an assembly, and your common law rises out of that. And I think that's...
So given that there are assemblies, okay, and that the assemblies guide the groups, and would I be right in saying that there has been growth of the number of common law assemblies, and that Australians are starting to realise, particularly here in Australia, that common law is a very useful thing, and that people are becoming much more interested in it these days?
Yeah, for sure. We very much in the now I'm going to swing into my national role, but we in the National Common Law Executive very much believe they're not our common law assemblies. The common law assembly is owned by the community. We are only there to direct, give advice, and help train. And that's what we've been doing over the last 12 months. We've trained up conveners and people to step in and form their own common law assemblies. And yes, it has been growing. And there is a case, one of our assemblies now in Canberra. I was only talking tonight, and some wonderful news. They're using common law to take the local councils on.
I want to point out that, look, it's not a frequent happening, but, and I've thought of a very careful way, politically correct way to say this. Sometimes a person will come along, a using type of wangling type of untrustworthy person will come along, you know, maybe the sort of person who visits Thailand regularly or something like that. You know, would come along, you know, comes along and might try to take these common law groups for a ride and try and turn it into a means of employment and a means of income. So I've got two quick fire questions to ask you.
Yep.
Do you make money out of common law?
No, I do not get paid 1 penny.
So you essentially guide and have a huge role in the Australian or national common law role, and you provide guidance to all these groups. You can ensure that they're run correctly. You've got access to the best training. You've got, you know, all the standards in place. So, you know, when someone comes across a new group, if they're, let's say they were under a leader who had faltered recently and they were looking for a place to take their common law, you'd be the man to contact. You could help them set it up lawfully, you could help them set it up morally, and you could help them continue to be a very powerful force and a useful commodity within our community.
Yeah, definitely. We have already done that, been approached by assemblies, and we've assisted them. It's a whole different shift. I think I know who you're talking about, Kent. I hope I'm right, but I think I am.
Look, I bought a young horse, a young male horse recently. I call it my colt. And my colt, it's a lovely little horse. But unfortunately, I may not be able to keep it. I don't have enough land for my colt. And so I think my colt is might be in a little bit of trouble.
Yes, I would agree with you.
Yes, okay, cool.
There's a huge shift. Just for instance, say someone set up or tried to set up these common law assemblies and own them and control them and make money
off of them. Make money off of them, yeah.
That is an absolute no-no. We first nationally how we started, we were approached because we've been saying it in Mackay for a long time. You start from the bottom up. You build your community. And from your community, it goes up. You do not start from the top, one person, and try and control everything, because all we're doing is shifting spaces. That's what we're putting up with present. And that's a no-no. So we very much have to re-educate and say, now look, we don't own these assemblies. Your community owns it. But we can give you guidance. We will help you to train and get you to a level and give further assistance as you go. If you get a problem, we're only a phone call or a Zoom meeting away, and we can go on and just offer some advice. And that's what it's all about. Training, advice, direction.
Excellent.
But not control.
Glen, you do all of this as a volunteer, right? You said you don't get paid. You do all of this as a volunteer. What's your motivation? Why are you doing it? What motivates you to keep going and keep doing this for the love of it?
I can answer that pretty easily. I know Kent's heard me say it. I used to say when our children were growing up, I'd look at what was happening in the world and I'd say, what on earth are we doing? What sort of life are we leaving our children? Well, I discovered when you have grandchildren, it gets about 10 times worse, because when I look at our youngest is a bit over 2 years of age, and when I look at him and think, yes, the time is now to stand up and make a change.
100%.
We have the ability. This is how we do it.
Yeah, 100% agree with you.
That's my motivation, 1,000%. I look at the kids.
You mentioned
as we
Go,
as
Cole.
we
Sorry.
move into brand new systems, as everyone who's trained in common law is going to be necessary, they'll be needful. We will put you to work. As we move into new systems and new government in this country, we will put the people who are trained and skilled at common law, we'll put you to work. Cole, I'm sorry for butting in over the top.
Not at all. Not at all. You mentioned councils earlier, Glenn, and you know, these new ones, you know, we've been butting heads with old councils for a long time. Now, can I throw a scenario at you? I just want to hear what you think of this one. In the Central Coast, where we have an amalgamated council, the council was ultimately stood down for corruption, and we have an administrator. We have an administrator that's come in. Now, this man is passing motions unmitigated before these public forums, even with an opposing crowd. What would a common law sheriff and a bunch of common law deputies do in a situation like that? If you're saying, and this is affecting drinking water and the quality of the drinking water and small farming. Now, if you sort to say arrest the development of that situation, what might that look like?
It's based. Common law is simple. It really is. But if you've got the two main things that do no harm,
yes,
cause no loss to people. Now, drinking water, you just nailed it. A couple of factors. Councils are not a lawful level of government.
Glenn, just say that again. Just say that again for our listeners.
Councils are not a lawful level of government. They are not in the Commonwealth of Australian Constitution 1900. They were brought in at a later stage. They did, and they have continued. I'd be here half the night telling you some of the tricks they've built, particularly in Queensland. We've had a lot up here. But in a nutshell, Cole, to answer your question, the papers would be sworn out. Again, exactly the same as we served on the Queen, the Governor-General, the Prime Minister, the Premier, all of those have had these papers, notices to appear before a common law court. A common law court would be established, the time would be given when they'd have to appear. That person, the administrator, the sheriff and his deputies would serve those papers. And if they choose not to appear, the common law court will go ahead. And it's not up to the jury. Not up to a judge. It is up to a jury of 12 of the community, the peer. They will reach a decision, and they will also work out a sentence.
What about arresting the development of that evening to prevent these unlawful motions being passed? You know, would there be a sort of a stepping up on stage and leading the man off stage and removing the microphone from their hand? You know, there's no such a thing?
Not really. You first got to establish a crime has been committed. And unlike our current law, in common law, everyone is innocent until proven guilty. not the other way around. So you can't go and arrest someone, drag them off, and then serve them papers to go up to court. Okay, you've got to do it the other way.
Mhm.
And he has a right to defend himself, and there'll be a prosecutor or an appointed person that will actually be there to prosecute. So no, that's not how it works. You don't just start rushing around arresting everyone, because that'll just end up, currently with our jails so full, we'll never contain it. No, but yes, he has committed, if he has committed harm, drinking water is a perfect one. Yes, he can be brought, but exactly the same as King Charles, as Pope Benedict. But you've got to have the paperwork done. You've got to have it done right. It's served then. Once the court comes to a decision, he either appears and defends himself, or if he doesn't, it goes ahead, and then he will be arrested. Or summonses for his arrest will be issued.
Glenn, I just have a question from you. Hang on, Ken. I just have a question from one of our listeners. There was a book in the schools explaining the Constitution in the very early 1900s. Do you know about this? What do you know about this at all?
You mean it was in 1900, the book?
The book was in the schools explaining the Constitution in the very early 1900s. I think that was a question.
Look, I know that I know there's you know, I mean, what are you trying to say about him? That he looks like he was born back then?
Well, I'm not sure. Greg, we might get you to just clarify what you wanted by that question.
Okay.
Be a little bit clearer in the chat for us, and then we can ask Glenn that question.
In front of me, and I'm happily to post this on there, so you got a link, is the Commonwealth of Australia Constitution dated the 9th of July 1900. That is the dinky-dyed Constitution. That cannot be amended without a referendum. There's been 42 referendums to date. Only 8 have passed. That is the only way you can amend it or have an alteration done to it, but you can't hide it. But to try and find that in a school now, you will not find it. You will find what I call a fake constitution. That, I hate using the term, I will call them the parliament, that are the current parliaments, or the parliaments since about 70s, early 60s, have rewritten it. That's what's around now. You will not find that constitution in a school, in a university, or in a library.
What's the 1901? You often hear people throwing around this 1901 constitution. What's the go there?
Okay, 1900 was when Queen Victoria, 9th of July, 1900, she actually signed it and it was in force. It was gazetted in 1901. That's where the
governments use a gazette. Around the world, they use a gazette to put their acts out to people. That's something that we found with the GNYY government, the First Nations government of the Githibal Ngarakmal Yukum Yukum. I love saying that.
Yep.
So we are actually creating a gazette in order to get our paperwork and laws and our police act out to the people. So yeah, gazettes, that's what they're for.
Yeah, we Kent, when he was an officer, he would have been gazetted when he was officially appointed. I certainly wasn't as an inspector. and also as a commissioned officer. So
Yeah.
it's basically a government newsletter for another term.
It's an official government newsletter that shows that authorises everyone to say these people have been officially employed and empowered.
But please, everyone, if we're talking the Commonwealth of Australia Constitution, we're talking the 1900, or if you want to say gazetted 1901, that one. And I will put a link up that you can share with everyone.
Oh, thanks.
Because that is the correct one, not the counterfeit one, as I call it.
If it's okay with everyone, I might switch questioning, unless you can go first, Ainsley, but I might switch questioning to a different tack.
Okay, I just want to ask Glenn one question. That the one thing that I found when I was when I first got involved in all the common law stuff, there seemed to be a lot of, and I've seen it everywhere, not just in the common law, but I'd just love to know how you guys handle it. There seemed to be a lot of infighting in the common law groups about which groups do this and which groups do that. And some people said no to assemblies and some people said yes. And it was a really big thing, which obviously turned a lot of people away from wanting to have anything to do with the common law stuff, which is a real shame because some of the groups had some really good stuff that they were going down. And it can be quite daunting when you first start to learn it all because there's a mountain of stuff to learn. How do you guys deal with the internal infighting, or do you have any in your experience in the common law group? And the second question is, if someone was wanting to get into the common law for the very first time, how do they decipher which group to go, which group to actually join that's going to give them the best experience, I suppose, without all that BS infighting? Because it's not nice. Nobody likes it. It takes away from the experience of wanting to learn it all. So can you give us a little bit of an insight into that for those that might be listening today and thinking about joining?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That is what motivated, or we were asked to form a National Assembly and go into the training. For instance, someone asked about a sheriff and training. Totally, 100%. I believe a sheriff is there to de-escalate, not escalate situations. So you're not there to beat heads. You're there to try and de-escalate it, bring it under control and guide things.
Yeah.
That's the whole idea.
Diffuse it.
Diffuse it.
Yeah.
The same thing with the assemblies. We've been approached from your country over in WA. We have an assembly going over there now. They had massive infighting. We've had it occurring in other states. They came to us. It's a case of saying, righto, these are the guidelines, and we don't say you must do it. What we say is, these are the guidelines. This is the reason. And we give them a reason. And we have a very good test dummy, call it for a word, in our own assembly in Mackay. We have worked with it, seen it develop, and we use that as a guide, and it has been proven time and time again to work. You never, ever have a situation like one person's at the top controlling 30, 40 assemblies. No, the assembly is controlled by the community and by the convener in combination with sheriffs, treasurers, secretaries, and other roles in that assembly. That's where it comes from. And that is vitally important. And we find if you bring it down to those community levels, you don't get the infighting. People understand it, providing you explain it and you give them a reason why we do it and what we hope to achieve out of it.
Yeah.
And that's how we go about it. We spend a lot of time training. We spend a lot of time teaching people, and Kent was absolutely right. We do use some fantastic training information on how to speak to people. Alan Pease, body language. I'm a great proponent of that. I've learned a tremendous amount of over many years. We use that, we pass that on. We pass on how to run an assembly properly. Now, also, those positions, I'll just say this before I finish, are not permanent. For instance, a convener is normally only there for about 2, I think it's a maximum of 3 years, a sheriff a maximum of 5 years. And after that, they step down and new blood will come in.
Can they come back later? Can they come back later if they want another term? Say they step away for 5 years. Can they come back and then do another 5 years if they want?
Probably if they're into enough pain, yeah. Look, they could. There's nothing saying they can't. But the whole idea of that is to stop factions developing.
Yeah.
Where you've got one person at the top of, say, 30 or 40 assemblies, and then each assembly has got the same convener, and he's been the same, or her, the same convener for 10 or 15 years, and your sheriff's been the same for no, that's no good. We want everyone in the assembly to step into these roles and learn. That, as Kent, I think it was saying, is massively important. And we dearly would love, Cole, to see this taught in schools, how it works. So kids come through school and understand.
I agree. It's got to be, yeah, go.
Well, that's right. As Ken touched on it earlier, I've been saying this for a long time myself. And before the movement, was that, if you teach a kid, well, what we used to call civics, and civics still exists. You can still find it online. The government puts it out there just for sort of a bit of sort of digital lip service, but you don't see it introduced into the classrooms often. And not only does it give you that defense that Kent and you guys were talking about earlier, but also a kid is less likely to step on the wrong side of the law when they realise where the right and the wrong of that legal philosophy that informs the law is there. And kids have got a good natural balance like that if you give them a chance. And not to mention that predatory policing that gives a lot of young people, like a conviction that prevents them from travelling or getting a good job. And then, of course, that they perform to that. So, yeah, mate, we do that. And that starts with, logical determination, which is what law is. Law is a logical determination. It's logical not to harm. It's logical not to cause loss. So, yes, mate, that is exactly part of the curriculum. Yeah.
Well, I totally believe we all have that inherent ability to know right and wrong.
Yeah.
You know when you're doing wrong. Yep. You know when you're committing a crime. So there's no argument there. That's what we aim at, and we do a huge amount of training with the assemblies, teaching them. The whole idea is we train the conveners and the sheriffs. They then go back and train their assemblies. So basically that's the idea. Train the trainers and they pass it down and it just keeps snowballing.
You were saying earlier about military law and you started to sort of smell a rat, or am I right in saying that? You started to find something that was a bit wrong with military law?
No, not really. I said I had an interest from learning military law.
Oh. I mean, it might be hard to sum up. What makes military law military law?
Military law is applicable. You've got a huge number of volumes. It is applicable to the military for purposes of control and education of the military, or in event of conflict and war.
Might come in handy.
Let's hope not.
It still has its place, but yeah, common law is a different role. That's all I meant. I developed I developed an interest in laws.
Glenn, one of the things I love about the law and about learning about the law, being able to keep it clearly in your mind because you study it. I think it builds confidence in the individual to do business and to live their life safely within society. How do you, am I on the right track there?
Absolutely. Common law, and I say this repeatedly, it's essential we do our own. You can learn a lot in schools. Cole, I admire what you're doing, but we still have the fantastic tools now in the form of laptops. That there, the Constitution, I would dearly love to see everyone read that at least 8, 9, 10, a dozen times. Read it and understand it. And also the annotation, which explains what it means. Now, reading that and then studying the common law, yes, it totally changes. I believe it would totally change people's self-worth, their understanding. They'd know where they're going, and they'd be less likely to wander off and do the things we're doing at present, which is out of control.
Not only that, well, it is out of control, mate. Not only that, I imagine every now and then, I imagine a world in the future where we've won and we have a fantastically moral system of government where, and you're going to laugh here, Cole, but this is the truth. I imagine that Cole is the Minister for Education for the country of Australia, because his educational systems are absolutely second to none. And we've taught our children and the law as they've gone through school. They come out competent in the law, and that they undertake that study with the Constitution. Can you imagine if I call him the jockey, Anthony Albanese. I shouldn't call him a jockey because it's an insult to jockey, so I won't do that anymore, okay? So Anthony Albanese, can you imagine that sad little man's face if he was the Prime Minister of 26 million Australians, of which 20 million of them were competent in common law and competent in the Constitution? And they communicated with him their wishes to him and kept those records. I wonder, would that mean, that filthy little man, would he have taken all of those billions of dollars, put it into a corrupt war? I wonder how much money of that comes back through the loops and goes into the Labor Party's pockets and goes into his pockets and goes into the pockets of private contractors that swings in loops and circles and ends up in a Swiss bank account somewhere. I wonder, would that filthy little man and his filthy companions, I wonder if they would have the courage to be as corrupt and as disgusting as they are as human beings. That's just my personal opinion, but I think that I've shared with you about my feelings about those people. But how much more, like, would we genuinely be able to make a difference in telling our leaders what to do if we were all trained in common law, we all knew the Constitution, and we were able to get our butts aligned in common law assemblies guided by the Australian National Common Law Assembly or National Common Law? We could, I've got a suspicion that we could swing those filthy, disgusting little politicians straight behind bars. But anyway, please enlighten us.
I think you might be right, Ken. I agree with you.
Please, and well, let's get it from the man. Let's get it from the man himself. Glenn, what are we barking up the right tree?
I totally believe we are. One of our most massive problems, I think back to when I went to school, knew nothing about the Constitution, was never taught anything about common law. I learned about constitutions from watching TV. I could tell you more about the American or the USA Constitution because I didn't even know we had one. Why? Because you couldn't find it. And that, if that is not keeping us in a shell of ignorance, please tell me what is. You can imagine if all of us had an understanding of what it meant, the Constitution, what it meant to have the ability in common law, and not just what it meant, but you would be expected to take your role in these assemblies. Like, you don't talk about one common law assembly, for instance, in the likes of Mackay. We could easily handle 5, 6 maybe in the outlining areas. Places like Brisbane, Perth, Sydney, you'd have a lot more. The whole idea is keep them down to about 100 people in your community, and that's how they work.
Yeah, that's
so you
just
think
one of the comments.
that.
Just one of the comments from our one of our people in the chat. Not even lawyers are taught about common law these days. Even there are some, dopey lawyers out there who go, common law, we don't have common law in Australia. And let me tell you, as a police officer, I enforced common law in this country right through the extent of my career. Okay, not just criminal law, not just codified law, but common law. I enforced that and received wonderful wins in court against very, very bad criminals. But anyway, yeah.
See, the biggest problem is, as I say, not only do these solicitors not know about common law, they haven't got a clue about the correct constitution. If you said to, I believe, half of them, have you read the 1900 Constitution? Have you read the annotation to that Constitution? Your answer would be no. And
yeah,
how
but our High Court judges and our Supreme Court judges, Glenn, you and I both know, they know about the Constitution. They know the unlawfulness of the government. And as far as I'm concerned, they have a fiduciary responsibility to be educating the Attorney General of our country about this, and the unlawful behaviour seems to just continue. We're almost out of time.
Yeah.
Ainsley, it's 8:28, 8:29 where I'm at. I'm at your discretion. Discretion, lovely lady.
Yep, definitely watching the time. And as I have a new council to help get up and running, Glenn, I'd just love you to just leave very quickly one last comment or parting word to our listeners tonight, who hopefully you guys have all enjoyed tonight. Give some love in the chat if you've enjoyed hearing from Glen and how the common law assemblies work. Hopefully you'll all start getting involved, and this is what's going to help change the face of Australia with councils and common law, stuff like that. So Glen, have you got one last comment you'd like to make to our listeners to finish off tonight?
Yeah, I'd just like to reach out to any of the assemblies that are having trouble. They are full of infighting, because I know there's a lot out there. A lot of them have already told me. I've been able to speak with them all over northern Queensland and down south. By all means, reach out to us. We will put our contact details for the national group in where you can approach us. We'll set up a Zoom and just go through everything with you with more time, because we're very pushed for time.
Yeah.
But that's all I really want to say, because the more assemblies we build and the stronger we get, the better chance we've got of winning. And it's 100% right.
Yeah.
It is absolutely going to be critical.
Yep. Excellent.
Thanks,
Excellent, Glen. Well, thank you so much for your tireless efforts, Glen, and everything that you're doing. in the space of the common law and the common law assemblies. It's most appreciated, because I know sometimes when you do so much volunteer, sometimes it can be a thankless job, but we truly thank you for coming on, sharing all your insights and knowledge. And obviously you have so much to share. We'll look forward to having you back again sometime in the near future, and learning a lot more about common law. So thank you to Kent. Thank you to Cole for joining, co-hosting with me this evening.
Thanks, Ainsley. Thanks, Glenn.
And
Thanks, everyone.
If you've enjoyed tonight's session, we'll pop the replay up as soon as possible. And as always, we thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Triple Tap. Bye for now.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.